Hey, hi, how are you? And welcome once again to our book study day. It's kind of book study Friday as of late. Going to be a little bit of a different, though, study. Last week we were on chapter 6. This week we are not going to do chapter 7. We're going to sort of give a little highlight of the first half dozen we went through. Partially just in case, this is your first time tuning in, you go, what is this? And you can get a little highlight, compact instead of watching like an hour or so's worth of video. Now, unfortunately, I was not terribly well prepared for the highlight reel, so I don't have sock puppets, but maybe next time. And I mean, that'll be awesome, wouldn't it? We could get like, enact little scenes and have a lightsaber duel. That'd be cool, wouldn't it? Yeah. Oh, I know. Woo. I just tingle with anticipation. Woo. But for this highlight reel, it's not going to be quite as exciting, unfortunately. Well, maybe not as weird anyway, but you will see certain classic moments which you may recognize, such as, check by these, shaking book. Ooh, gotta remember that moment, eh? And this one, babbling old guy. Definitely a biggie. I know. I shiver with anticipation even thinking about it. But without further ado and any more babbling necessary, see, it was nice to turn the light off this time so it doesn't look like I have a halo or my head's on fire. We'll get down to our little bit of a highlight reel here. Just sort of a snippet of what we got. We're back to Shaking Book Part 2 or 3 here now as we try to, for those who don't know, I think I have mentioned I do have a neurological disorder I was born with that causes my hands to shake, in case you're curious. Now, we began with our first chapter, which was Daisy Petal Christianity, and this was based off the idea of us spending so much of our lives taking the he loves me not, he loves me not, sort of based upon what's going on in our lives, and the difficulties that presents us with. Our next chapter was what Jesus' disciples didn't know, and that was about the fact that they were not aware, at least initially, that they were hanging out with God. They didn't realize it was God in the flesh. There was nothing that prepared them for that. But it was something that God had desired all along. Right from the very beginning, he had always wanted to have that community, that sense of camaraderie and whatnot. That was almost a mispronunciation there. Did you catch that one? Yeah, but that he wanted that sense of friendship with them. And that is what his desire was right from the beginning. And how much of a thrill it would have been to him to be there. But the fact that they could accept him easier and what he said and who he was when they weren't standing back going, it's God, trembling in fear kind of a thing. Our third chapter was threatened with hell, and that is the old evangelistic technique of threatening somebody with, if you die tonight, do you know where you're going? You're going to be surrounded by, in a golden city or something, or you're going to be, whatever. And the fact that really didn't, that's great to get somebody to go, it's a choice between, paradise or burning. It's a no-brainer, but it's not really much good for getting people to become disciples, to want to have a relationship with God. That just puts them in a, got a get out of hell free card, off I go. And it's really not, if that's the only reason you're in it, is for what's awaiting you when you're dead, you're missing the whole point, because it's about the here and the now. Afterwards is just a bonus feature. Our next one was A Father Like No Other. That would be number 4, if you're keeping count. And this is where we went into the story of the prodigal son, or what is known as the story of the prodigal son. And coming to find out, it doesn't have a whole lot to do with the kids, because we can all relate to them, but more to do with the father and who he was and just how accepting and tolerant and loving and compassionate he was. And he was that way in the beginning and at the end. He didn't change. It's just who he was became a little more apparent to both children, well, at least one for sure. And the second one left with a choice as to which to go with. And it was that story that Jesus used to try to help his audience understand this is who God is, right? the picture you have in your mind is not matching up with who God really is. You have to understand who He really is. Then we were at Welcome Home, and that was dealing with trust. And if you remember the story, if you watched the fifth one, the story about him, his wife takes in stray dogs, and how the dog would always be, some of them are fine, but some of them act like every person they've ever been near in their life has beat them, hurt them, used them, whatever, and they're terrified. And it takes a long time for them to trust enough to walk, but they have to be the one to make the decision to trust. Otherwise, they're potentially a danger to, well, the author's children and his own pets and whatever, and the author himself. And that we are all put in a position where we do have to trust. Trust is a choice, and we can choose to trust or not trust, but, you get beaten enough, it gets really difficult to make that choice. But it's an individual thing. It's between you and God, or you and whomever for that matter. But, it's a choice worth making, a choice worth considering on an individual basis. It's difficult to live your life not trusting anyone or not trusting God based upon what someone else did, right? Just because somebody else did it doesn't mean this person's going to. Just because somebody else did it doesn't mean God's going to, because God's not a person. He's not quite as flawed and screwed up as we are. And he's not like some of like the old like deities you see and hear tell of, like the whole Zeus and Odin and all those guys, some of those guys were out of there, going by the stories anyway in the mythology, those guys were nuts. They were just people with superpowers. You've watched the Avengers, I'm sure. You've seen Thor. Just saying. Anyways, and our last chapter last week was the tyranny of the favor line. And that was about how we learn fairly early on in our lives that garnering favor where we can serves a purpose. We do it with our parents, knowing what makes them happy and what makes them mad, with our friends, with school, with everything else. And it brings us to a place where we start to relate to God in that measure, and we start to think, okay, things are going bad for me. We're going right back to the first. Remember that whole loves me not thing? We're right back to that again. Things are going bad, obviously that's a sign I'm doing something wrong. Things are going good, that's obviously a sign I'm doing everything right. Both are wrong, right? And you get into this place of thinking you have to do more or be better in order to have God's favor on your life, to be blessed by God, to be loved by God. And that's very, very inaccurate. If nothing else, God's favor is a blessing. It's a gift that He gives. It's not a wage. It's not earned. That's why He uses the term gift for stuff instead of, there's a big difference between getting, a gift and, earning your wages, right? And with God's favor, it's a gift all the way. Anyways, that's kind of the short, rough, and dirty of our, and we have to show the book, of course, Wayne Jacobsen. See, we got Trembling Book again. Ooh, that could be big on the highlight reel at the end, wouldn't it? They'll show that one at the Oscar Award, I'm sure of it. It's Trembling Book. Okay. He Loves Me by Wayne Jacobsen is the book we are doing. As I said, I grabbed this one off of Amazon. It's only like $15 or something like that for the, soft copy one. You can get Kindles for cheaper, but I always have trouble reading a Kindle book. I don't do well on the phone, and I find it hard to read them on the screen, and it just, when it comes to a book I actually want to read, I usually go, hard copy is a little easier for me to deal with. Anyways, that will be all for today, boys and girls. I hope you have a good day and a good weekend. And as I've said before, and will continue to say again, we are all in this life of ours together. So be kind to one another. Take care. We'll see you next time. All right.